Hello there. Today I thought I'd do a video on some collage cards that I've been making. These ones are fabric collage. Little snippets and scraps and bits and pieces of lace and embroidery and little dangly bits. Tiny little pieces of fabric that I just stitch together and make into cards. I've been making similar things for journals for quite a while, but it was only when I found these little pieces that I'd started and not completed in a box, in a project box, that I suddenly thought these would make pretty little cards for birthdays and particularly for a sewer. So I thought I might as well turn the video on. I've really lost my motivation lately, and even though I've made a few videos, I just haven't been posting them. It's been quite a down time, but I thought it's about time I got over myself and got cracking. And so this one is the first one for a while. Now in the past I've quite often made little embroidery cards, and these are the ones I'm going to show you today are quite different to these. These little ones are just pieces of very naive embroidery that I trim out and add to the front of a card. This little one was one I was trying to bead around when I was practicing my blanket stitch beading, and it's a complete and utter mess. But I thought for a little moving house card, you know, we're not going to stop the wild horses to look at the beading, so that one's okay, and this little one too. But the ones I'm going to show you are not cards made from a piece of embroidery. They're simply a collection of little scraps and bits and pieces. For this one, for example, I've got some calico, a little bit of Panama cloth, some little tiny scraps of a cotton lawn, and tiny little snippets from an old embroidered piece of table linen. I've added a button to it, stitched them all together at the top, added a little fabric pin and another little bit of thread, a couple of beads and a bell, and I'm going to make that into a card. I've got a couple of card bases here that I'm going to use in cream. I've cut them down, they're not quite the full 15 by 10.5. I've trimmed them down because I found some in my stash, some American sized nice cream envelopes. So I've just trimmed these cards down a tiny bit to accommodate them. I've cut myself a piece of purple cardstock, and because it's got a white core, I'm just going to go around with my Pitt pen and get rid of that white edge that's showing. These are very quick and easy to make. I've got a box that I keep scraps of embroidery, doilies and other table linen that I've trimmed out in the past when I've been making some embroidered cards. So I just keep all the scraps, and then you can snip out the piece you want for the next project. And it's quite a nice relaxing thing to do. As apart from anything else, it's getting rid of bits and pieces from your scrap pins, cardstock, fabric, charms, that sort of thing. Now I tend to leave the threads a bit dangly until I've completed. That way I can you might be able to see there on the back where I've stitched. It's just a simple square to hold them all together, and then I've stitched the button on. It's a very old button out of my mother's old button box. I've been adhering these with fabric glue simply because I want to use it up. I've had this for quite a while and I need to have it gone. I hate things to waste simply because I haven't used them. but any of the Helmer gummy type glues work perfectly well. Doesn't need very much. I did think I might put a little bit of paper lace around the outside of the mat there, the purple mat, but I always like things to be very plain and simple. I'll just trim those a little bit so they don't stick out past the edge of the card. And there it is. It's as simple as that. A little bell jingles, a little bead is just there for a little splash of colour. And that's as complicated or as simple as it needs to be. So there's one done. And I thought for this one I might just show you how I go about deciding. I'll just show you my box. You can see it's a big box and it's full of bits and pieces of embroidery and old crochet and bits of embroidery that I've started, calico, linen. There's a couple of old doilies, and you can see this one is so badly worn that the threads are mostly broken, but you can snip out these little bits of colour and they work very, very well. For this one I've pulled out some coordinating bits, some blue Panama cloth, some linen and a piece of more even weave linen in a cream, and I'll just go ahead and snip because I want to put these on these rectangle cards. That sort of decides me a little bit where I'll cut. And for this one, you know, you can see this is really raggy. This was rather a pretty little, I think it was a coaster that my mother embroidered years and years ago, but it had an ugly commercial lace on it. So I've unpicked that ages ago. So that's it, and I won't throw these little pieces out. I've got a little bag that I pop them in, and in actual fact I think I want some of this yellow seam binding. We'll see. Some of these I ravel out so they look a little bit more distressed and interesting. And you don't want all the pieces the same shape and size, but I might just trim those out. Fray out the edges. And then just pile them in a way that looks sort of pleasing and coordinated. I might put a little strip of this. Heavier fabric. Again, I'll just try that a little, just because it softens the edges, brings it together. Turn that round. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. Just put these pieces in here so I don't completely obliterate the workbench, as I'm in the habit of doing. Every little scrap of dyed seam binding I keep, because sometimes it's just the right colour and you only have a tiny little piece that's really not suitable for anything else much. So I've made a little dangle for this. I wasn't sure if I needed it, but I've got a tiny little bead charm, and the garment pin was just bronze, but because the bead charm was silver, I coloured up the little garment pin with silver, what is it, silver mixative, alcohol ink. Might put the little bell on. I quite like these little bronze bells. I like the oops. There we are. That's because I didn't close that little split ring very well. I've now just correct that. I like to add a split ring to a charm because it helps them dangle properly. If you put them on without a split ring, they tend to stick up awkwardly. And that can just be pinned on, and I'll use some of this to decorate it. Now I'll just go and get on my machine and sort this out and give it a little bit of stitching, and I'll be back once I've got that done. Here we are back again. I've stitched those together through all the layers, just in a little rectangle across the top, and then I went across and sort of ruched very, very roughly a piece of that yellow seam binding that I've dyed with mustard seed sometime in the past, and there it is. I've got the little dangle all prepared, the little bee and the little bell, and I might just try and put that through the seam binding, I think. And there it is. That's it done, and all I need to do now is just attach it to the card and trim up any of these little whiskery bits that I think might be better gone. Oops, wrong glue. Might as well use the other one, seeing as that was my aim. Any sort of fabric glue would do for this. And again, you don't need to use the sewing machine. You could easily just cross stitch these on by hand, or do a bit of back stitching or tacking, anything. In fact, I think a bit of very rough tacking with coloured threads might look rather nice. Add a bit more texture and colour. A bit hard to centre these because they're a bit asymmetrical, and just leave the flaps to flap and tidy up the bits and pieces that you don't want to dangle anymore. And there we have it. There's another card done. Quick and simple, quite effective, and clears out some of that little scraps and bits and pieces. I'll just leave those to dry, and this one to dry, and I'll put a couple of photos up on the end of the video of the others that I've made. And that's it. I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.